Well, I'm glad that you're here tonight. We're getting into the really great part of the story of Joseph. Now we've seen God bring him through the pit, and that word is used. He's in the pit. He's in the pit of Potiphar's house. He's in the pit of the prison. God brings him up. Remember, he's twice had his clothes taken from him. As he comes out of the pit, twice they give him new clothes. And so now he is elevated to the position of basically prime minister. He's going to manage the land. He's given the idea to Pharaoh that during these 7 fat years that he's going to tax and keep 1/5 of the crops. They're going to store it up, and then during the 7 lean years, he's going to sell it, and he's going to make his master rich. He's going to make Pharaoh rich in this way and increase the wealth of Egypt. I wanted to look at the very end of chapter 41, verse 50. I might have read this, but I want to point out one thing. Before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the first one Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. Literally, in Hebrew, that says, the Lord has made me forget all my debt. Now, that's a sort of strange phrase, and you can see why translators, I will tell you, anytime translators translate Scripture, you've got to make some tough decisions. It's never, there's no such thing as a word-for-word translation. That is impossible because you don't have an exact word. Like things that we say, I'll give you for instance, the word, when we say everybody, everybody came over the other night. Okay, now think about what that means, right? Everybody. And do we take that literally? Well, we take it with the author's intent. The author intends us to take it a certain way, and that way is that it has a certain meaning. It doesn't literally mean everybody. You know in Portuguese what the phrase is for everybody? Todo mundo, which is all the world. And that was, I remember when I first learned Portuguese, I was like, what? All the world was at my house last night. Really? All the world was at your house last night? And then it occurred to me, it's really no different in English. We say everybody. Not everybody was at our house. So what is a literal translation to say everybody in English? If we translated that literally into Portuguese, it would be todo corpo, everybody, and that would make no sense. They'd be like, what? That's not the colloquial expression. So translators have to make these kinds of decisions all the time. Do we translate it or do we, and then the big temptation is to interpret it. And translators do this, they can't help but do it. But my translation philosophy is I want as little interpretation as possible. I want to know what it actually says. But I also get that when you're going from language A to language B, sometimes you have to make those interpretive decisions. And here's one of those spots where it says, the Lord has made me forget all my debt. That seems backwards, because what is Joseph's debt? It seems like it should be his brothers that owe him. It's Potiphar that owes him. They've robbed him of 13 years. And so when he says my debt, but I think what Joseph is saying is that basically the debt of those 13 years, like those 13 years were taken from him. And he's saying, the Lord's made me forget that. The Lord has let me cancel that. And so it's an interpretation to translate it as hardship, because that's basically what he's saying. But the real word is debt, and I think it gives us a little bit more insight into what Joseph is thinking. And so the word Manasseh, remember in Hebrew, the words they have consonants and no vowels. And so a lot of times in these namings, you're taking two words that have the same consonants, but maybe just the pronounced vowels are a little bit different. And so there are word plays. These names are basically puns. And so he names his son Manasseh, which means basically that it means debt, because he said, God's made me forget all my debt and my father's house. And then the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And that word means fruitfulness. So Joseph has two sons. Now these two sons, when Jacob dies, he's going to bless all of his sons. And these two sons Joseph is going to get two tribes in the tribes of Israel. Each of his sons are going to be the eponymous head of a tribe of Israel. So the author wants us to see this. And then verse 53, the 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end. And the 7 years of famine began to come. As Joseph had said, there was famine in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph, what he says to you do. So here you see Joseph has executed his plan exactly like he said. For 7 years he's built storehouses and grain. Now when the famine comes, the first people to cry out for help are the Egyptians themselves. And this is exactly why Joseph has kept this. He's enlarging the wealth of Pharaoh, and they go to him and they have to buy back grain that he has stored up from their crops. When the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth. And again, this is one of those places where this is a literal translation. And does that mean that in North America that there was a famine and they came to Egypt? That's not what it means. Again, you got to take the context, and it just in that whole part of the world, and which to them was all the earth. It's just an expression like everybody. The images that all of the Middle East is in this famine. They all come to Egypt to buy grain, because Egypt's the only place that prepared for it. So now into chapter 42. When Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, why do you look at one another? So all right, now the scene has changed, and we're back up in Canaan now, near Hebron, and Jacob, as the patriarch, feels a responsibility. So he has 11 sons there. 10 of them have wives. And he's got a lot of grandchildren. They've got flocks and herds. And after some time of famine, we're not told exactly how long, but in some time of famine, notice this is a very dad thing to say. My dad used to say, why are you standing there with your bare face hanging out? This is pretty much what he says. Why you guys standing around looking at each other? Like what is that solving? Behold, anytime you see behold here in the text, we would say, look, I've heard that there's grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die. He says there's only one thing to do here. If we want to live, we got to get food. We're a big tribe of people here, and we've got to have sustenance. So go down there and buy some grain for us. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers. Notice the play on the word brother there. So the implicated 10 of them are his half-brothers. But then it says, but the one that didn't go was his brother, his full brother. The other son of Rachel, Benjamin, who's the youngest of the 12 sons, and he did not go down with them to Egypt. Why? Because Jacob feared that harm might happen to him. So you see right there, again, Jacob's favoritism for Rachel. It's almost like he's saying that the others are a little bit more expendable than Benjamin. But I think there's something also the fact that Benjamin is the youngest. He is the youngest. He's also the only surviving son of Rachel. So for all these reasons, Jacob says, no, you leave him here with me. You guys go down there and get us grain. So thus the sons of Israel. Now this is the phrase that later it gets translated, the children of Israel. It's the same. This is the time you see it for the first time, and it's going to become the name of the nation, the children of Israel, the sons of Israel. Here's the first time you see it. So we're going to move from thinking of Israel as the person of Jacob to Israel as the nation. The sons of Israel from those 12 sons of Jacob to all the people of Israel. And here's where we see that begin to take place. So the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for the famine was now in the land of Canaan. You can imagine as they make the trip through the Negev across there by the Red Sea to get to Egypt, that the road is crowded. The people are streaming down there from Syria, Canaan, Phoenicia, all those places with, they're coming from as far away as Damascus to come to Egypt to get food. And it's a one-way road at this point with everybody coming. He says, all that known part of the world was coming to Egypt to get food. Now Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Oh, there it is. This is how we were introduced to Joseph, right? This is the first thing we heard about him. He had a dream that they're going to do this very thing. And so you've got this like bookends, Joseph's dream. Within there, you've got the dreams in doublets, right? The butcher and the baker. And then Pharaoh, all three of them have dreams. And now Joseph's dream is being fulfilled. You see the dream and then the fulfillment. And here it is. He sees them bow down to the ground. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them. Now, remember, all the way back up in chapter 38, we've seen the author use this word a lot. When Tamar kept Judah's signet ring and a staff and all that, and when Judah comes to put her to death because she's played the harlot, she said, recognize whose these are. The ESV translates it identify, but it's this same word. Recognize whose these are. And we've seen that word used, and now it's going to be used a lot. It means to recognize, to identify. And how does Joseph identify his brothers? He recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. So immediately, what the author does not tell us, but you see happen, is Joseph immediately makes he comes up with a plan on the spot not to reveal himself, which has got to be hard, right? In one of two ways. The best case scenario is he reveals himself to them. Guys, hey, it's me. But I think most of us would think the other thing would happen, and that is, oh, now you're coming to me. Oh, look at this. You bowed down to me just like I said. That's what most of us would do. Joseph, he immediately decides not to reveal himself. And of course, he's speaking in the Egyptian language. He's not speaking Hebrew to them. Later, in the text, it tells us that they're using a translator. So he speaks in perfect Egyptian, and they're speaking Hebrew, and he's speaking through a translator, and he speaks roughly to them. He makes sure that he's animated, that they see that he's sort of irritated with them. He treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. Where do you come from? He said. They said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them. And he said to them, you're spies. You've come to see the nakedness of the land. So he accused them. You've come here to see how destitute things are here so that you might use it to some kind of a military advantage. They said to him, no, my Lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Now that line had to catch Joseph's attention. Honest men. You honestly threw me into the pit. You honestly sold me into slavery. Yeah, okay. It is funny the way we justify ourselves and characterize ourselves in spite of all the evidence, isn't it? We're honest men. Your servants have never been spies. He said to them, no, it's the nakedness of the land that you've come to see. And they said, we, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more. Now, but there's a euphemism. I mean, what else can they say? They could say, well, one is dead. They don't know that for sure. Or they can say, we sold one into slavery, and that would sure put them in a bad light. So they come up with this very tactful way of implying that he's dead, even though they don't know that. No, one is no more. And how those words must have just landed on Joseph like a sledgehammer. One is no more. But Joseph said to them, it is as I said to you, you are spies. Now he's repeated this charge 3 times. And you can imagine they're getting real nervous because he's got all the cards. They have none. He can arrest them, he can kill them, he can do whatever he wants. And here he's accusing them of being spies. So he says, by this shall you be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested whether there's truth in you. So here's what he says. Go get your brother. Here's how I can tell you're telling me the truth. Go get your brother. 9 of you stay here. 1 of you go. And I'll test you that way. Or else, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. Now, this is, the text doesn't tell us what their conversations were like in those 3 days. We can imagine that they're talking to each other. Man, what are we going to do? Do we take this deal? I know none of them want to go back and tell their father they need to bring Benjamin down there. And 9 of them are under arrest. And now we want you to let us take Benjamin too. And you can imagine their conversations for these 3 days. But on the 3rd day, by the way, notice there's the Jewish reckoning of time. it says he puts them in custody for 3 days, but on the third day. So for us, this would be like 2 days, but on the third day he goes to them. He said, do this and you'll live. For I fear God. Again, he's using Elohim, not Yahweh. He's not letting them know that he worships Yahweh. He's using the generic word for God. I fear God. So this is him saying, you're honest men? I'm a God-fearing man. I fear God, so I'm giving my word on this. If you are honest men, he reverses it. He says, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. Now again, Joseph is being really, really sly, because he lets them, he shuts them up for 3 days to let them talk about this among themselves. And then, knowing that this will move them, he reverses it where just one stays behind and the others can go. And you can go ahead and take food with you. I'll let you take some food. Well, okay, that's a good deal. But you got to bring your youngest brother to me. So your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. Then they said to one another, now look here. Here's where we see the ghost of the past coming to life. They said to one another, in truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. Now that shows you this is 13 years this has been with them. And now, when there is this event, they connect it. I want to point out that I think that they're judging rightly. You know, my dad never, when I was a kid, my dad spanked me on many occasions, frankly. You know what he never did? He never said, come here, let me spank you. And he spanked me. Now you go figure out what that was for. He never did that. I always knew exactly what it was for. There was connection between my discipline and what I had done. And God doesn't do that either. God's a very good parent. And whenever he chastises us, there's really no question in our mind what it's connected to. You don't have to sit around and guess, is this because of something? I think there's always a connection between our sin and God's chastisement that we know. We know this is connected. Usually it happens in the form of natural consequences we bring on ourselves. But if God does something more than that, we get it. And here they are guilty of selling their brother into slavery for 13 years. His cries and pleas for them to not do that to him have haunted their memory. Now what is at risk? The other brother. And Joseph, unbeknownst to them that it's Joseph, is requiring them to go get the other brother. And they're thinking, man, we can't do that. We've already destroyed, one way or the other, we've destroyed the life of one of Rachel's sons, and now this has come upon us. And they make the connection. This is because we did that. And, you know, we're reaping what we sowed. And that's why this distress has come upon us. Verse 22, and Reuben answered them, did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you did not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. Then he turned away from them and wept. Yeah, you picture the scene of Joseph standing there, and they're talking in Hebrew. They have no idea he can understand them. And the minute he hears in them that there is some remorse for what they did, this is a glimmer of hope, right? And this is vindication to some degree, and it's the possibility of restoration. And all of that, again, it just pierces his soul. And Joseph has to turn away and control his emotions. He turns away and weeps. Maybe he goes into another room. We don't know, but he turns away from them so they can't see that he's emotionally moved. And he weeps. And he returned to them and spoke to them. And he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to replace every man's money in his sack and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them. So Joseph commands his guys, okay, fill up all their sacks with grain, but put their money back in their bags, get everything ready for them to make this long trek back up to Canaan. And Joseph's guys do exactly what he said. They loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of the sack. He said to his brothers, "My money has been put back. Here it is in the mouth of my sack." At this their hearts failed them, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is this that God has done to us?" Sin will make you see chastisement even in God's blessings. And here, because of their own sin, instead of them going, "Wow, look at this great thing that has happened," they're going, "Oh no." And they get that it's God doing this. I mean, a sovereign God is in control of this. What's going on? And it's like God knows what we've done. God has seen to it that we are punished. And they're going to accuse us of stealing. We didn't pay for this. Our money is still here. And when they came to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, "The man, the Lord of the land, spoke roughly to us and took us to be spies of the land. We said to him, 'We're honest men. We've never been spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan.' Then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, 'By this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me and take grain for the famine of your households and go your way.'" Now they leave out. They don't tell Jacob the way he toyed with them and the way he shuts them up for 3 days, right? Because that's going to make it harder to convince him to let them take Benjamin. So they say, here's his requirement. "Bring your youngest brother to me, then I shall know that you're not spies but honest men, and I will deliver your brother to you, and you shall trade in the land." And as they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob, their father, said to them, "You have bereaved me of my children." Look at that, plural. "You've bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more." So he's like, there's no way we're getting Simeon back. You still have your money. You go back down there, they're going to say you didn't pay for this. So there's no getting Simeon back. It's going to look like you broke the covenant with this Lord of the land. We're not getting Simeon back. You've bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin too. All this has come against me. Then Reuben said to his father, "Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you." Well, I don't know that I'd want Reuben for my father. But I believe this is Reuben saying, "I'm willing to put everything on the line." But I also think he does not think there's any way that Jacob would kill his own grandchildren. But it does indicate how serious he is. It's like literally on the life of my children, I will bring Benjamin back. I will bring him back to you. But Jacob answered, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is the only one left. Now look at this. What's the thing that's standing in the way of them getting food to live on? It's the lie they told. He says, your brother's dead. And Benjamin's the only one left of Rachel's children. I'm not going to let him go. And the lie and their heinous deed now stands between them and the ability to provide for their families. He said, if harm should happen to him on the journey that you're to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol, to the grave. And so Jacob says, no, this is not going to have it. And so they wait. Now the famine was severe in that land. And when they had eaten the grain they had brought from Egypt, their father said, go again, buy us a little food. Hunger is a powerful motivator, isn't it? So when they run out of food, and he's looking at all these hungry children, his grandchildren, and his sons and daughters-in-law, and their flocks, herds, he's like, okay, go. And so you have all that time. Again, this has to be months at least that pass, that the brothers are daily having this conversation about, we've brought this on ourselves. We're in a fix. We're in a mess. We don't know how to take care of the problem, and there's no way forward here. And they're watching their grain supply get lower and lower and lower, and finally it's gone. And then enough time goes by that they're all starving, and Jacob says, okay, go. But Judah said to him, the man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. By the way, remember, Reuben's sitting basically in jail down there, right? Reuben is getting a little taste of what Joseph had. And every day they're looking at each other. Basically, if Jacob doesn't let them go down there, they really have lost him, lost Simeon. So Reuben says, you understand what it's going to take. We can't go down there without Benjamin. If you want us to go buy food, you're going to have to let Benjamin go with us. Israel, Jacob, said, why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother? He's like, why on earth did you tell that? And of course, they're like, there's no way we knew he was going to pull this thing on us. But, they're trying to convince him that they're not spies. And so they did it. They said, the man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, is your father still alive? Do you have another brother? By the way, so there's a detail that we didn't get in the original conversation, but now they're giving more details about their conversation with Joseph, and it shows that Joseph was probing them. Now, what is it that Joseph is after? Joseph is trying to discern how they treat Benjamin. Because if they treat Benjamin no better than they treated him, if they resent Benjamin, then they've not changed at all. And this is why when Joseph heard them say, man, this is because we did this. This is on our heads. We brought this on ourselves. This gave Joseph hope, and that maybe they have changed. Maybe they are somewhat repentant. And he had probed them. Tell me, is your father still alive? Tell me about him. Tell me about your brother. And Joseph wanted details from back home, but he did it in such a way that he didn't tip them off that he was their brother. And he says, what we told him was an answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, bring your brother down? And Judah said to Israel, his father, send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge of his safety. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we had not delayed, we now would have returned twice. A couple of things here to point out. One is Judah is basically saying, look, this is almost like Mordecai appealing to Esther. You know, you're going to die anyway, right? There's no other option here. You go in front of Ahasuerus and plead the case of the Jews because you're going to be discovered. You're going to die. And that's when she goes, okay, if I perish, I perish. And she does it. In the same way, here's Judah appealing to his father. He's saying, let the boy go with us, because if we don't, we're going to die. Let him go so that we can live and not die. Otherwise, we're going to die, both him and you and us and all of our little ones. So I'll be a pledge of his safety. And if I don't bring him back to you and set him before you, then it's on me. But then he throws in the little dig. If you hadn't made us delay, we'd already been back 2 times with food. We wouldn't be hungry. So then their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits in your bags, fruits of the land in your bags. Carry down a present to the man, a little balm, a little honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. So this is stuff that would grow even in dry season, in a famine. Jericho was known for its balm, and that's why Cleopatra got Mark Antony to take it away from Herod and give it to her, because Jericho produced a lot of income, and Cleopatra wanted that. She had it until she died, and then Herod got it back. But Jericho was a place that produced this to this very day. You go, in fact, if you go to a lot of like stores, I've seen it in Kroger, these Jordanian pistachios, Jordanian almonds, that they have some sort of a sugar on the outside of them, like the hard shell of around the almonds. Those are made in, a lot of them come really from the West Bank. They have pistachios, nuts, all that from the Jordan Valley. And this is the one thing they could grow even in the famine. And so he says, you take the best of the land, the fruit of the land, and you take it as a gift to him. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. So you go back prepared to pay for what we've already eaten. By the way, that says something about their cash on hand, doesn't it? It says that they had money, but there was no food to buy. So they take enough money to buy the food. Take your brother also and arise. Go again to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, and may he send back your other brother and Benjamin. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. He's saying, if this will destroy me, if this doesn't work out, I am devastated. I won't recover from this. So he puts it on them. Make this happen. So the men took this present, and they took double the money with them and Benjamin. They arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. You can just imagine the trip all the way down there. And they're terrified. This has to go well. There are a lot of lives at stake if it does not. And they've given their word to their father. They've got kids and grandkids that need the food. So the whole way down there, they're talking about how this is going to work. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said in Egyptian to the steward of his house, bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon." The man did as Joseph told him and brought them into Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. Now, can you blame them? They don't know what he's going to do. First of all, this guy is in complete control. And secondly, he's pulling stuff out that they don't foresee. They had no clue that he was going to ask them to bring Benjamin back. And yet here they are. And they don't know what he's going to do. He's had their brother in prison all the time they've been gone now. Maybe there's bad news about that. They don't know. And why does he want to meet with us? This meeting can go badly. The men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, "It's because of the money which was replaced in our sacks the first time that we're brought in, so that he may assault us and fall upon us to make us servants and seize our donkeys." Okay, what's their big fear? That what happened to Joseph will happen to them. Joseph was sold into slavery. Their big fear, he's going to make us slaves. Well, there's just a poetic justice in that, isn't there, that the author wants us to see? So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house and said, "Oh, my lord, we came down the first time to buy food, and when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was each man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it again." Notice there, before they get the accusation made against them, "You stole our grain the last time. Let's us be proactive. Let's us tell them, hey, we found this money. We've brought it back. We've got the full price here. So we brought it again with us," in verse 22, "we have brought other money down with us to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." He replied, "Peace to you. Do not be afraid. Your God, even the God of your father, has put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money." Well, your God must have done that because we got paid. We're square. Then he brought Simeon out to them. And when the man had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when he had given their donkeys fodder, they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, where they heard that they should eat bread there. Now, notice how Joseph's full hospitality is rolled out for these guys. His servants don't just take care of them. They take care of their donkeys. They feed their donkeys. Where else have we seen that? All the way back to Rachel. Remember, Rachel waters Abraham's servant's donkey and cares for him. And so here you see in Joseph, Rachel's son, through his servants, offering this kind of hospitality to the brothers. But the whole time, man, I mean, this takes a lot of time. There's this whole ritual to hospitality in the Middle East. And a lot of time is passing. They wash their feet. They feed the donkeys. They go through all these little pre-meal rituals. And they know at noon Joseph's coming in, and they're still sort of worried what's going to happen. And verse 26, when Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present that they had with them and bowed down to him to the ground. Oh, there it is again. You can't miss that. And he inquired about their welfare and said, "Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" Now, this is a custom in much of the world, is that when you begin a conversation with someone, is your family well? I've had this happen many times in the Middle East. Had it happen in Nigeria. Some of you have heard me tell the story about me getting to meet the king of the land in Nigeria. And they took me into his throne room, and I got to sit down on the throne beside him. First thing he said to me, "And your wife, is she well? And your father, is he well?" And they go through this whole thing. It's very common in much of the world. And Joseph goes through this, but there's more than ritual about it to him, right? He really wants to know, how is my father? But he says, your father. And they said, your servant, our father, is well. He's still alive. Now, Joseph very well may suspect that his father is dead because it took him so long to come back. He probably figured out that Jacob wouldn't let them bring Benjamin back. Now that Benjamin's there, maybe it's only because he's dead. And so that's why he asked, is he well? But they say, your servant, our father, is well. He's still alive. And they, here it is a third time, bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son. Then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep. What's he thinking? How have they treated Benjamin? Has Benjamin suffered what I suffered at their hands? He's moved with compassion. At the very least, Benjamin's grown up an orphan, in a sense, no mother. And probably he sees something of himself in Benjamin. They're, after all, full-blood brothers. And for all these reasons, he's moved with great compassion, and he has to leave. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out. Again, more time passing. The brothers are there. They've got to be just terrified, mortified at what's happening. Why did he rush out like that? What's he going to do? Oh man, we're in trouble. Did we say something wrong? And he comes back out. He's washed his face, and controlling himself, he says, very tersely, serve the food. They served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves. Now, what a picture. So they got a table for all the brothers. They got a table for all of Joseph's. These would be his officials, not just normal servants, but all the officials that worked for him. They're eating at a table. And then there's Joseph eating completely at a table by himself, being served alone. And it's because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that's an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. The men looked at one another in amazement. They're like, what is going on? Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. I want you to see the picture. So you've got the Egyptian officials eating at one table, and here are these Hebrew brothers eating at one table. Joseph's at a table being served, and Joseph gives the command to his serving servants, serve them food. And they take food off of Joseph's table and begin to serve the brothers. Now, I'm going to tell you, in the Middle East, when they serve you food, they almost force feed you. It's insane. Tanya and I, in fact, today I got birthday wishes from Eunice Bassett and his wife, Mysoon. And I'm going to tell you, when they accept you, they really accept you. Eunice wrote me a note today, and he said, he's got 4 kids, but he said, you and Tanya, our family, we no longer have 6 in our family, we have 8. And they talk like this. And when we went over to the West Bank with them one night, and that's where they had cooked this leg of lamb in the ground all day long. It's like a 12-hour cooking process. And they had all these grape leaves, stuffed grape leaves. I mean, just tons of them. And they had all these side dishes just all over the table. The table's just covered with all these different dishes. And they just shovel it on your plate. They pick up this big chunks of meat and they put it on there. And my son would go, "Eat, Hershael. You're not eating. Is something wrong with the food? Is there something wrong?" No, it's great. And man, you're just like stuffing it in. And the minute there's a clear spot on your plate, they're putting stuff on it. "Here, eat. You're not eating." I'm eating. and it's really a feast. And you get this picture. Joseph says, "Serve them food," and they go over and they give all of them a big chunk of food. And again, these guys are hungry, right? They've been famished for months, and they've had this long trek down there. You can imagine what they served Joseph. I mean, he's the prime minister. He gets the best food in the land, and they get each a portion. But when they go to Benjamin, they put 5 times on his plate what the others get. He's clearly getting special treatment. What does that mean? What's that signaling to them? What's this guy telling us? Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. Well, man, they interpret this as Joseph's grace. Okay, we don't understand this guy. We don't know why he likes us. We don't know why he likes Benjamin, but it's party time. Let's party. And they drank, and literally it says they were merry with him. Guess what that means in Hebrew? They got drunk. That's what it says, that they drank and got drunk with him. I mean, they're drinking wine. Now, I don't think it means that they're just totally drunk, but the Bible says that wine gladdens the heart of man, and that's their hearts get real glad. They're partying with him, and yet, and so Joseph, what's he doing? He's testing them. He's testing their spirits. He's observing the way they're going to treat Benjamin, the way they're going to treat him. He's going to get more information out of them, but his testing's not over. There's more coming, and we'll talk about that next week.